Under the unbearable heat of summer, the Red Army faced a desperate situation. It was late July 1941, and the relentless advance of Axis forces left the Soviet border in ruins. Once vibrant cities like Vilnius, Riga, and Minsk now lay in silence under Nazi domination. Anguish hung in the air as Soviet soldiers desperately sought a chance for victory, a glimmer of hope to reignite their shaken spirits. Time was running out, and they needed a miracle. With the enemy at the gates, Soviet leaders saw in the Battle of Smolensk a possibility to turn the tide. And it was in this turmoil that an unlikely opportunity arose: the Yelnya salient. Located deep in territory under Soviet control, this protrusion into German front lines, surrounded on all sides by Russian forces, offered a unique chance. It was time to counterattack, to strike at the seemingly unbeatable German war machine. For the Red Army, it was like seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, a small opening to turn the game around. German power on June 22, 1941, the world trembled at Operation Barbarossa, the largest military offensive ever seen. Over 3 million German soldiers, supported by thousands of tanks and aircraft, crossed the Russian border, with Moscow on their horizon. It was an ambitious vision, a swift victory, the collapse of the Soviet army, and control over vital resources and vast swathes of territory. This was not just a mere struggle between armies. It was an intense clash between opposing ideologies, a battle between the symbol of Soviet communism, represented by the hammer and sickle, and Hitler's sinister swastika of Nazi fascism. Even in the face of the attack, the Red Army refused to surrender. Initially stunned and caught off guard, but Stalin quickly regained composure and rallied his troops. In the early days of Operation Barbarossa, which the Russians call the Great Patriotic War, several border cities like Brest and Grodno fell under the rapid advance of the German blitzkrieg, leaving a sense of imminent despair. On July 3, Minsk was taken by German forces, dealing a significant blow to Soviet defenses. However, the resolve of the Red Army remained unshaken, and despite devastating losses, they prepared for the battles ahead. As the days of July unfolded, both sides suffered heavy casualties, revealing the true magnitude of the conflict. The ruthless German advance left a trail of destruction and a string of captured cities. Battle at Smolensk. The Battle of Smolensk, a crucial moment in the German campaign on the Eastern Front, began on July 8, 1941. This ancient fortress on the banks of the Dnieper River, a key point on the road to Moscow, was a vital logistical center for the invaders. They saw Smolensk as a strategic springboard for launching the final assault towards Moscow. Field Marshal Fyodor von Bock led the Army Group Center with a challenging mission: to capture a crucial city. On the other side, Marshal Semyon Timoshenko, an experienced Soviet leader, was determined to defend the western front of the Red Army. The battle was intense from the outset. German tanks, with air support, surrounded a portion of Soviet forces on July 16. Despite German efforts, the Red Army did not retreat. They launched stubborn counterattacks, causing heavy casualties, but preventing the Germans from fully taking the city. Meanwhile, amidst the chaos, the Germans inadvertently created a bulge around Yelnya by the end of July. Yelnya, located just 80 kilometers southeast of Smolensk, gained strategic importance for General Heinz Guderian, commander of the 2nd Panzer Group. They saw it as a launching point for future offensives against Moscow. Surrounded by Soviet territory on three sides, the bulge became a weak spot for the Germans and an opportunity for the Soviets to counterattack. At the height of the Battle of Smolensk, and with the Yelnya bulge emerging, Adolf Hitler surprised by making a controversial decision. Against the advice of his generals, he chose to postpone the advance on Moscow and directed his forces southward towards the fertile lands of Ukraine and northward towards the emblematic city of Leningrad. Hitler's decision wasn't just a military matter. It was a calculated strategy to weaken the peripheral areas of the Soviet Union and deal a significant blow to its war efforts. This choice left the Yelnya bulge, dangerously close to Moscow, in an inexplicably vulnerable position. Meanwhile, the Red Army was undergoing significant changes. Stalin, after initially denying the severity of the German threat, finally recognized the harsh reality of the situation. The Red Army had to adapt quickly and prepare for a prolonged defense that would require courage and resilience to the utmost. As German forces continued to encircle Soviet units, General Heinz Guderian and his 2nd Panzer Group managed to cross the Dnieper River in July. Despite advancing with determination, the 29th Motorized Division, led by Brigadier General Walter von Boltenstern, and Panzer Group 3, under the command of General Hermann Hoth, faced strong resistance and failed to close the gap with the Soviet defenders. With thousands of Red Army soldiers escaping, Guderian ordered Brigadier General Ferdinand Scholl and his 10th Panzer Division to advance and take Yelnya. On July 18th, the 10th Panzer Division launched towards the city. Meanwhile, Major General Yakov Georgievich Kotelnikov, in charge of the defense, ordered the 19th Rifle Division to prepare anti-tank trenches, position artillery, and fortify the city for the imminent attack. In the city of Yelnya, with its 15,000 inhabitants, the order was clear. Everyone was to join the defense effort by digging trenches and transporting supplies. Meanwhile, soldiers from the 19th Division fortified the banks of the River Duna, preparing for what lay ahead. The German advance led by Scholl and his 10th Division was imminent. However, the presence of the 2nd SS Motorized Division Reich, commanded by Paul Hauser, faced difficulties due to the poor roads, slowing down their progress. On July 19th, the German vanguard was caught off guard by Soviet artillery fire near the improvised trenches. To overcome the resistance, Scholl divided his forces into 2 combat groups, aiming to flank the Red defenders. The strategy worked, forcing the Soviets to retreat, but not without paying a high price in lives. At 2:30 p.m., the 10th Panzer Division finally entered the city, engaging in a fierce house-to-house battle to clear out the last pockets of resistance. Meanwhile, Kotelnikov and his troops fought bravely in Yelnya. Scholl had to send reinforcements to fight in Dorogobuz. The battles were intense, almost reminiscent of the trench warfare of World War I, but on July 21st, Dorogobuz fell under German control. Despite the capture of Dorogobuz, scattered Soviet units continued to resist in the outskirts of Yelnya. Aware of the imminent threat to the capital, Stalin, Timoshenko, and Zhukov agreed to launch a counteroffensive to halt the German advance towards Moscow. As they prepared for the showdown, the Soviet defenders, cornered in the hills, anxiously awaited the arrival of reinforcements. The German troops, including the 10th Panzer Division and Waffen-SS units, were preparing to fortify the Yelnya salient, aware of the imminent arrival of enemy reinforcements. They strategically divided themselves to confront the Soviets before they could join the Red forces in the region. Under the command of Hauser and Scholl, the Germans unleashed coordinated attacks, combining heavy artillery with tank and infantry advances. The combat was brutal, causing hundreds of casualties on both sides. But soon, the German forces began to feel the effects of resource shortages, such as fuel and ammunition, affecting their ability to continue the offensive. While the Germans pressed on, the remnants of Kotelnikov's 19th Marine Division resisted bravely, fighting to the last breath in the elevations around the salient. To bolster the defenses, Soviet rifle divisions were redeployed to protect Kotelnikov's flanks. Additionally, Katyusha rocket launchers came into action, providing valuable support and helping to repel German attacks. In the last week of July, the Soviets launched counterattacks across the Yelnya salient, showing fierce determination to hold their ground. The Germans soon realized the enemy's tenacity. Meanwhile, Guderian visited Scholl's headquarters and received concerning reports about the state of vehicles and supplies. The battle intensified, and the outcome remained uncertain. As they anxiously awaited the much-needed provisions, Scholl and Hauser found themselves at the mercy of scarce resources, desperately awaiting reinforcements that were slow to arrive. Despite their steadfastness, the Germans began to lose ground, while the Soviets received a continuous flow of reinforcements. The Red Army maintained its relentless offensive along the entire front. Faced with persistent scarcity, German artillery units needed to choose their targets carefully, as the conflict dragged on relentlessly through the weeks, culminating with the end of August 1941. The Waffen-SS and Heer divisions successfully fended off the increasing attacks from Soviet armor and infantry, but their losses were significant. Pressure mounted with the arrival of new divisions from Zhukov's reserve front, while German units were exhausted and supplies dangerously scarce. Despite Guderian's efforts to reinforce Yelnya, Soviet troops managed to enter the city on August 27, leaving a landscape devastated by fierce conflict. In the following days, Zhukov coordinated air and ground attacks to drive the Germans out of the salient. Finally, on September 3, Commander Fedor von Bock was authorized to withdraw his troops from the salient, avoiding total encirclement. The suspense was palpable as the forces prepared for this crucial retreat. During the months of July and August, the Germans suffered bitter losses, totaling over 23,000 casualties, while the Soviets, in turn, accounted for at least 33,000 losses. The offensive in Yelnya left an indelible mark, representing the first major setback for the Wehrmacht during Operation Barbarossa. This small victory, amid the largest military intervention ever seen, the Battle of Yelnya, was not just a military achievement but also a powerful propaganda tool for the Red Army. It served as a bomb for Soviet morale, fueling their resilience and determination in the defense of their homeland. The tension was palpable as soldiers prepared for further clashes, each side seeking to achieve the victory that could change the course of the war. The future remained uncertain, but the determination on both sides was unshakable, fueling the suspense surrounding every step in that theater of war. As autumn approached, the landscape changed, but the war scene remained. New strategies were devised as military leaders sought to seize any opportunity to gain an advantage over the enemy. In the trenches, soldiers prepared to face the unknown, aware that each battle could be decisive. Meanwhile, in the hearts of the fighters, a mixture of hope and fear simmered. Memories of previous battles still echoed in their minds as the future unfolded before them, full of uncertainties and challenges. Amidst this whirlwind of emotions, the determination of every soldier remained unyielding. They were willing to sacrifice everything for the cause they defended, for the freedom of their countries, and for the safety of their loved ones. As the sun set on the horizon, casting a golden light over the battlefield, the soldiers prepared for another night of combat. They knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they were ready to face them with courage and bravery. And so, the war raged on, an incessant struggle for survival and freedom. As the world watched with bated breath, the destinies of millions of people were shaped in the heat of the conflict, in the hope of a better future and the promise of a day of peace. As days dragged on, the front lines moved like tides, advancing and retreating in a deadly dance. Each battle was a desperate struggle for life, a fight for supremacy that echoed across fields and cities ravaged by war. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, political and military leaders gathered in strategy rooms, plotting plans to turn the tide in their favor. The stakes were high, and every move was calculated with precision, in the hope of gaining a crucial advantage over the enemy. However, for the soldiers facing enemy fire every day, concerns were more immediate. They fought not for abstract ideals, but for their own lives and the lives of their comrades. Every explosion, every burst of machine gun fire, was a brutal reminder of the fragility of human existence. And even amidst the chaos and destruction, moments of humanity emerged. Enemy soldiers shared cigarettes and stories during temporary lulls in combat. Gestures of kindness and compassion shone amidst the darkness of war, reminding everyone that, despite the circumstances, there was still hope. As the battle raged relentlessly, the promise of a better tomorrow kept the flame of resistance alive. Soldiers fought not only for their nations, but for the idea of a world where peace reigned over war and where love triumphed over hate. And while that vision seemed distant, it was a dream worth fighting for until the last breath. As the war's story unfolds, I invite you to join us on this journey of discovery and reflection about the events that shaped the world. If you enjoyed this narrative and want to stay tuned for more fascinating stories about wars and their protagonists, don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. This way, you won't miss any updates and can closely follow each new chapter of our series. Together, let's explore the highs and lows, the heroes and tragedies that have marked conflicts throughout history. Until next time.